Hello, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass. This is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, the show trying to make the world safe for ADHDers. I'm a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist and the father of at least two ADHD kids. And I have been involved in ADHD treatment, evaluation, coaching for a long time, for more than four decades, let's just say. And I just got back from a conference, and it's a podcasting conference, and it was just chock full of entrepreneurs. And guess what? It was also chock full of people with ADHD, which is not really uncommon when you think of entrepreneurs and the 80s, well, 70 to 80%, depending on what study you read, of those people that are in those professions or that are consider themselves entrepreneurs. They build companies, they write books, they something that they're in charge of and make all the decisions and get all the benefits and suffer all the losses. And they are highly motivated. And that seems to be one of the characteristics you need to have in a job if you want an ADHD person to do pretty well in it. I mean, there are a number of kinds of jobs that they do best in. Knowing ADHDers, as most of you do out there, are there folks who have trouble staying focused, especially if they're not interested, if they're bored, any of that kind of stuff. So you get jobs that are, well, the characteristics of jobs, and they don't have to have all these characteristics, but they have to be somewhat intense. It can't be just do whatever you want for 8 hours and that's good enough. Now these have to be jobs that require some attention, some motivation, some of that sort of thing. It also has to do with apparently having not always, but in general, you have to be somewhat passionate about it. And we already talked about ADHDers. Basically, can do almost anything they want to if they're interested in it. Well, they have to be passionate about a vocation to stay in it for years and years and years. And then the other option is to have a job that is just so structured that you basically have to do it, or else you get into some serious trouble or that sort of thing. Or sometimes it's just the precision that really motivates people. And we'll go over those in a little bit, but it's sort of like an accountant. You have to be right. You can't be wrong. You can't screw up the client's money. And the other thing that sometimes, instead of just any of these other things, is just that it has to be fast paced. It's something you have to be doing 90 miles an hour. And then there's yet another area where people tend to do pretty well who are ADHD, and that's just being creative, the people who make things with their hands and that sort of stuff. And then we go to entrepreneurs. That's the group I was with this last week. People who they figured out that they may not be such great employees, but they're really good at being the boss and taking all the risks and dealing with all of that. And then probably the last one I talk about are risk takers. And those are people who do semi-dangerous stuff, or maybe it's real dangerous stuff. And but just that adrenaline rush, the dopamine rush they get from doing their jobs keeps them coming back. So I'm going to go back over these a little bit and give some specific examples. But the idea was, and it kind of hit me while I was surrounded by tons and tons of entrepreneurs. Let's talk about passion. Okay. The people that tend to just like their jobs so much are just so devoted to their jobs that they have to keep doing it. And these are people like doctors and nurses, and teachers, and dare I say it, psychologists. uh, so these folks, they're so passionate about what they do and they feel so good about what they do, that they do it. Well, I won't say they wouldn't do it with if they weren't getting paid, but they that being passionate about the job, about loving what you do, keeps them coming back and keeps them interested, and so they don't have attention problems around this particular subject. I mean, they may still like my father-in-law had a horrible time reading medical digests and that sort of stuff, but he was a great doc, working with the people and all that stuff was very good. And then the next category we have are the structured jobs. Now, structured jobs are, again, those jobs where you kind of need to be pretty precise. That can be like, I used to wonder, wait a minute, okay, I know about ADHD. Why are so many of the people I know of who are ADHD and who are parents of ADHD kids or who have ADHD themselves, accountants? I would think that would be, just horribly boring and they wouldn't be able, but no. Structure sometimes takes the place of real interest and motivation. As you know that if you mess up, like I've previously said, if you mess up like a client's account as an accountant, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be big issues. You're going to, pay a pretty severe price for it. And another area is the military. The military demands a high degree of precision and accuracy in doing whatever job you've got, whether it's fixing a jet airplane, tearing down a M15 or whatever. It's just you have to do it precisely. You have to put all the pieces back where they're supposed to be. You have to aim your equipment at the right target and all this sort of things. And there are real-time consequences for messing up. The traditional drill sergeant that you used to see in the World War II war movies is kind of gone by the board, but there's still a lot of very close supervision. Even you come into the Air Force or the Army or the Navy or the Coast Guard or the Marines, and you get a lot of individual attention. And if you start screwing up, you get a lot more attention rather. And so that frequently has the effect of, I'm interested, I'm paying attention, I'm doing it right. And, that always, when I was in the Air Force, people who required medication were not allowed to enlist in the Air Force. I thought that was probably pretty poor planning on anybody's part. Is just, people didn't know very much about what ADHD was back in those days. So you could say, oh, he needs medication. He can't function without it. Da, da, da. Well, actually, you can function without it because they are so tightly supervised. The situation is so structured that they catch errors very, very rapidly. Okay, next would be something that's fast-paced. These are jobs that move so fast that you just, you have to stay focused to keep up with it. And that, the first thing I think about is chefs. I used to have an uncle who was the head chef at a very Tony restaurant in Massachusetts. And it was like watching a military operation. These guys are chopping, these guys are sauteing, these guys are frying. It was very interesting but very interlocked. Everything had to be done at the right time, at the right temperature, at the right pace, and so on. And it moved fast. You're putting out 200 or 300 meals a night. You're moving. And surprisingly, other things that are pretty fast paced are things like being in an emergency room. Being on staff at an emergency room. or being a surgeon, or being on the surgical staff in a hospital. Uh, you're moving, you're doing a lot of stuff. And, when you get some kind of an emergency or a large accident or anything like that, the pace goes even faster. But that keeps an ADHDer focused. And then there's the one most people think of when they're thinking about ADHD, and that's all the creative outlets, the idea that probably every guitarist in a rock band has got ADHD. Uh, but, you get anybody who makes art uh, is probably, well, at least that would be a good career for them to be in as an ADHDer. And these are art, any kind of art, metal sculpting, painting, even designing, all those things are the things that are going to make it easier for an ADHD person to do well in. I am familiar with, well, my own son was a jewelry designer. I have no idea where that came from. We don't have any jewelers in the family. We don't have any diamond dealers in the family. We, in spite of my last name, we're mostly a lot of Scotch Irish people and not not real creative typically. But of course, I've told this story before. He's one of these kids who could take, 2 rubber bands, 3 paper clips, and an ink cartridge from a ballpoint pen and make himself something that shot ink pens across the room. It's anyway that kind of creativity, and it doesn't mean it has to be all Tony art. It can be a person who's a craftsman. You've seen them before. When they build things, they build them so well and so fine that it's actually a piece of art. Like most people who build furniture by hand, by themselves, carving the wood and all the other tasks that you have to do. They're craftsmen, they are artists, and so they also get a lot of ADHD people in their craft. I suppose actually art is always a little of a weird area to work with, because what makes something art? I remember when I was a kid watching Pablo Picasso shoot an ink cartridge at a sheet, and it just made a kind of an ink blot on the sheet. And that was, Ed Sullivan was cheering and wanting the audience to applaud, and great art, great. And I was like, what? How is that art? I don't know. But because it was Picasso, I guess. But anyway, the creativity part kind of keeps people with ADHD focused. And then the ones we get that I spent the week with last week are the entrepreneurs. These are people who own businesses. They build businesses. It can be anything from a gourmet restaurant to a podcast to a internet business. I mean, the internet businesses are really taken over as far as ADHDers are concerned, because they are not really that complicated to do. They require a certain level of technology, but you get the rush of being a bit of an entertainer for a short period of time anyway, and they control everything. So if you don't remember to do something, you're the one who pays the price. So the next time you probably really do remember that you need to flip that switch or push that button. So, but this also can be, it can be online, it can be brick and mortar businesses, people that actually have storefronts and that sort of stuff and sell product out of there. But the whole internet world is rapidly attracting a bunch of ADHDers into their midst. Uh, and then we have we have the risk takers. We have people who are pilots. We have people who are race car drivers, stock car drivers, off-road racers. We have construction divers, people who wasn't complicated enough doing the job on land. They want to do it 40 feet below the surface or more. And X gamers are definitely in the risk taker and the I would observe to be ADHDers. I remember there was some show on TV. I can't remember what the title was, but they basically interviewed a lot of these X gamers. The people who rode mountain bikes down the side of a cliff or skied, big steep things I would never ski down. Let's just put it that way. And snowboards and all the rest of it, and they, they were talking about it. And these were probably in their 20s. And they all had like massive numbers of orthopedic injuries, broken legs, broken arms, dislocated shoulders, dislocated knees, just a whole bunch. And most of them had like more than a dozen major surgeries, and they're still in their 20s. But that risk, that, adrenaline rush, that dopamine hit, kept them focused, kept them wanting to do it again, and it is not not probably the best thing in the world for them, because I know when they get to be my age, they're going to have troubles getting up and going for a walk. But it is as long as the area, the thing they're doing, grabs their attention, focuses their attention, because it's so risky, because there's such satisfaction in making money, or because you get the satisfaction of having created something that didn't exist before, or because you've basically been moving so fast and keeping up, but you've been keeping up, that keeps them focused. And the intensity of what you're doing, that you love what you do so much that you'll do it anyway. And then just because you're so passionate about it. And then, some of these people have more than one of these characteristics, of course, and some people have a lot of them. And then, of course, there's the external sort of focus, like in a real structured environment, like the military. Like we used to have a draft, so all of us fit young men who used to have to go into the military for a period of time. And I think in a lot of ways that was good for a lot of people. It probably saved them from going to jail and that sort of stuff. And it also gave them some confidence in themselves that they didn't have before. And this is not fighting wars and that sort of thing. This is just that you're doing something you're supposed to do, and somebody's making sure you do it. And that, excuse me, that keeps you focused, and that gives you some more confidence in yourself. Well, I just fixed a jet engine, or I just loaded a cannon, or, all these different things that you do. I just learned how you surface a submarine and so on. Those are things that give people confidence. And when you start having confidence, you start believing in yourself, stuff doesn't stand in your way quite as much. And you become more resilient. And I keep beating the drum for resilience. Teachers should know about resilience. Parents should definitely know about resilience, and they definitely should know more about it if they have a child with ADHD. because ADHDers, you're going to make mistakes more so than people who don't have ADHD, but you can learn and you can learn to improve, and eventually you will if you keep trying. The thing you don't want your ADHDer to do is learn how to quit, because that's real tricky to get over once you've established that pattern. Okay, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras, just back from a week-long conference, and my website is terrygingrasphd.com. If you go there, you can sign up for my newsletter. You can sign up for an interview where we will decide if we could work together in coaching, that sort of thing. And we will be I said, I forgot my newsletter, and I have a newsletter. And you can have the newsletter, the podcast, those are all freebies. And we'll see what else I come up with in this new year. And the website, if you are not watching on a web or podcast, is Dr. G's ADHD Chat. And remember, we're trying to make the world safer for ADHDers. We'll catch you next time. Have a good one.